I'm Tracy Walker, and I'm going to read from my book, The Cards I Was Dealt That Transformed My Life. And today's chapter is going to be chapter 11, My Change and My Kids. The whole point of my transformation was to benefit my children, to break the cycle so they didn't have to experience my life. However, the change was difficult for my children, who had been conditioned from birth to survive in a very dysfunctional environment. As I explored who I wanted to be, my children fought me every step of the way, and we locked horns on a daily basis. Housework, shopping, gardening, cleaning the pool, mowing the grass. I was the only person, and I had to depend on my children to a point when it came to maintaining the house. They were kids. They wanted to be kids. It was hard for them to understand how much I was struggling, trying to manage volatile situations with my son's ADHD, focusing on getting an education myself. It wasn't just the chores though, the tension went deeper than that. It was the alcoholic-dominated family they'd been experiencing since birth. Alcoholism creates a very controlling and manipulative environment. Everyone involved behaves both like a parent and a child. One minute they want control over others, the next minute they're throwing tantrums. My children learned this behavior through watching me and my interactions with my partner in the same way that I learned by watching my parents. I created the situation because I couldn't do absolutely everything. When the children didn't get their way or wanted to take back the control, they'd move into poor me or the blame game. It was always someone else's fault. And so we battled. I believed it was my role to help my children learn to use all appliances. When they went out into the world, I wanted them to be self-sufficient, not like my neighbour's husband who didn't know how to use the washing machine. When my neighbour passed away, he was lost. She'd always done everything around the house. I didn't want my children to be like this. I understand how hard it must have been for them. Children need to be children. My children didn't have that opportunity. What came out of that situation was my eldest regularly stepping into the role of parent. I can still see her laying down the law to her brothers. Problems arose when I wanted to be the parent though. My daughter probably felt I didn't need her anymore, or that she wasn't good enough. It reminded me of how I felt when my mother remopped the floor that I'd just cleaned. My children resisted because they believed I was trying to change them. I was trying to reinvent their lives. Everything about my new behaviours was utterly foreign. They were comfortable with how things had been. They knew how to react to those situations. Suddenly, I was turning everything upside down and inside out for them. Change is challenging for everyone concerned, especially when people don't understand or feel the need for change. It was me who was struggling with where I came from. My children had so much more than I did as a child. That's not their fault. All parents want to give their children more. In my case, however, my more had become the life skills to create something beyond what I'd been born into. There was no choice for my children, and that's the hard bit. They just had to come along for the ride. What a ride it was, and not a good one. As a parent, I set boundaries, but every boundary I set, she would push back. If you're going out, she'd step up. Hurry up, you two, she'd say to her brothers. She'd come so used to doing this when I was busy studying or found it hard not to continue taking over. Then she found it hard when I tried telling her what to do. I don't blame anyone. What I'm doing is recognizing how we can all get caught up in the cycle because we don't know anything different. With 3 children, there was always an imbalance. It's often this way in families, 2 against 1. In our case, the majority denominator was my daughter. She always wanted to be the mother. And if I'm completely honest, I did put her in that position at times. When I did try to be mother, she fought, she resisted, and she brought her brothers along with her. She was always in, and one of the boys would be out. This was the control she had. For me, taking back that control as the parent was so hard. Sadly, this is what eventually tore our family apart. I could see what was happening, but no matter how hard I tried to bring us all together, it just didn't work. Outside forces. Nothing came easily. Single mum, 3 children, 1 with severe ADHD, attending school, maintaining a home. There were many times I wanted to give up, but I also wanted to change my future and knew it wouldn't happen if I didn't continue to put one foot in front of the other. I needed to keep moving forward. I didn't know where forward was or what it led to, but I did know that no matter what, I wasn't going to go backwards. As long as I kept taking steps, it didn't matter how small or slow they were. One particular time I came extremely close to walking out on my study goals. My son had been out of control at school, misbehaving, running away. The phone would ring on almost daily basis. Then one day, after yet another phone call, I was so overwhelmed by constantly having to do everything on my own that I went to one of my teachers and said, I think it would be best if I just give up and stay home. I said, I need to look after my children. The teacher just looked at me for a moment. And what about you? She said. What about me, indeed? They were the exact words I needed to hear. After this short conversation, I realised that for me to survive the challenge of home and study, I needed a structured routine where we all had chores to do. I knew the structure would be good for my children too, plus they'd learn some life skills along the way. Not everyone agreed with my choices or what I was doing. I told myself that old Tracy would have been terribly wounded by the opinions and behaviours of others, but new Tracy wasn't about to allow that to happen. Old Tracy let fear rule her life. She'd get in the car with him when he'd been drinking because she was afraid, not for her life. She was afraid of being left to raise 3 children alone. She was afraid of not having enough food to feed her family. Irrational fears stopped her in her tracks every time. New Tracy refused to listen to her fears. That alone was terrifying in itself, but I knew I had choices. My fear would no longer keep me limited or rise up to consume me. Some tried to punish me by ignoring me or not inviting me to things, but I refused to let that get me down for long. I was entitled to my choices. They were mine. As I grew into my new skin, I began to stand up and be heard. Some people were not comfortable with this new me. I even had my ex-partner's parents accuse me of being in a cult, all because I'd started to respect myself. Some people started to ignore me and eventually reject me because they couldn't cope. All that did was tell me I was moving forward and breaking free from these shackles I was born into. And there was the name calling when I was a teenager. Stress meant I couldn't gain weight. I'd heard people say that going to bed with me would be like going to bed with a bag of bones. Moving forward also meant coming across people in business and networking situations who were threatened by the new me. I didn't fit into their mould. I'd find myself not being acknowledged when I went into a room. I joined a group and paid my money, yet wasn't acknowledged for over 6 months. It doesn't bother me anymore because I've realised that the people that I do attract are the people I want to work with and support their endeavours. I used to have to wear a different face for different situations. Not anymore. I'm proud of who I am and who I'm becoming. There is still so much more to learn about myself, and I'm open to the challenge. I don't have to put others down to make myself look good. I don't feel the need to fight back if others undermine me. I'm not a sheep anymore. I have a voice, but I know when to step away for my own mental health and well-being. What I have learned is I need to stay true to my standards and behaviours, and if others don't have the courage to stand up for what is right, that is their issue. Principles over personalities. I follow this practice and I've tried to instill it into my children. We look at what is right rather than who is right. I understand what my values and principles are. I don't change direction depending on who I'm with. I try to be consciously aware of what comes out of my mouth. We live in a world of blame. I'm over-blaming other people for what happens to me in my life. The only person I can blame if things are not working out for me is me. I have the power to walk away. I've always had the power to choose. I just didn't realise it was there. I can choose who I want in my life and who I don't. I don't need to wait around to be accepted by nasty, manipulative people. And the reflection on that chapter is what I learned as a child impacted my own children. Whether good or bad, children learn from what they see. One of the things I had to do was forgive myself, which was not easy to do or say. It was definitely uncomfortable when I had to put myself first. What might have happened if I'd given up my education again and stayed home with my children? Would I be living a different life? Would they? I suspect that we'd all be on the same merry-go-round. Even now, I see us jumping on that ride every so often. For many years, there was a huge rift between my sisters, just like there was a huge rift between my mother and my family and her family. And years later, that same rift with me and my children was like watching a movie on continual repeat. The reason for the rift were all similar too. They were about control and manipulation. They were also about rejection, or the perception of rejection. No one wants to be rejected, but often what we think of as a rejection is actually a choice made by someone else who has the right to choose what they want in their life. Feeling rejected rather than accepting another's choice is a learned behaviour. Judgment is a learned response. Blame is a learned response. I learned how to react from my parents as they learned from theirs, and my children learned from me. The difference is there's no blame now from me. Instead, there's an acknowledgement of the lack of awareness. That acknowledgement is empowering, and it allows me to invest in myself and take control of my life. Every step you take can bring you closer to your dreams. I know this because I decided I was deserving and worth more, even when I didn't know what more was at the time I started my journey. What about you? Are you living the same life over and over again because it's the easier path? Or do you want to start reaching for your dreams? And I'll leave you this quote from Thomas A. Edison. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time.